pushing this into the organizations to, prioritize that time, which in some cases may impact certain initiatives, and it's a matter of getting the right priority and visibility on it. Then recognizing and rewarding cloud contributions. There's nothing that people respond better to in the workplace than recognition and reward. And I think looking for a way to do that, to provide that recognition and reward, not only to the individual cloud team members or development teams that are whose operational efficiencies have gotten better, but the leaders of some of those teams as well getting some credit. But essentially, rewarding and making sure there's visibility to that, so everyone knows where the value is. And then, choosing a partner that will educate your team along the way. We are a consulting firm. Prior to InterVision, I spent 25 years with Accenture. There's a reason why consulting firms are, find a lot of business in areas like the cloud. There's a rapidly evolving set of technology that consultants make it their business to be on top of that and to bring that expertise to bear for our clients, and to do it in a way that is collaborative, so that we bring those clients along with us in that journey. Believe it or not, what makes us tick is making clients happy, and seeing clients embrace technology and pick it up is a good thing. Then the last one, this is a bit of a generic kind of title, right? So I need to kind of make it real for y'all, but data-driven strategy just means, let's look for measurable ways to validate the direction we set for ourselves and that we continue to set for ourselves. So everything starts with a business analysis, TCO, ROI driven decision making for IT and the business. And that is just saying IT and business makes that complex, right? A business driven initiative that's not taking into impact the IT implications of decisions they make in an implementation choice in an ungoverned environment can have kind of unforeseen fallout, essentially, right? So I think not only are you looking at IT and business to work more closely together, but to understand the implications of their decisions on the business and the cost to your business and your organization. Develop measures for business and IT performance. In digital transformation, we've always talked about bringing the business closer to the people that are doing the development. So in the case of agile use case development, as you're developing applications, you're looking at some measure in the business that is meant to directly impact, and that can be extrapolated to cloud work. So looking at what revisiting TCO and ROI, having measurements that are KPIs associated with, not just delivery. It can't be delivery for delivery's sake. It's got to be tied to something measurable on the business side. Obviously, there will be, there's the cost aspects of it, people and cloud, but tying it to, some take up of business, some measurement of customer satisfaction. Obviously, an emerging business model is going to be a lot easier to track, but some sort of measure for business IT in order to inform the next step that I talk about here, which is to regularly assess, evaluate, and course correct. Not every cloud decision you want to expect to go wrong. And again, it's not necessarily about cloud. It's about, enabling your business, whether you're making that as an on-prem, a hybrid, or a public cloud decision. I think the advent of, public cloud and the acceleration that it provides the business makes it more important to regularly assess. In the on-prem world, things, you've got the CapEx, you've got a life for your hardware, you're setting direction in larger chunks. Your choices for software are larger chunks, right? You're buying you're licensing on these, this enterprise software. In the cloud, you are spinning up infrastructure and spinning it down that night, right? So, you can these decisions become much more, directionally, they're still important, but your ability to change becomes exponentially simpler, and thus something you want to take advantage of as part of setting that strategy and direction. The number 4, plan for and manage risk. There is risk. Again, I think I talked about kind of expecting and designing for failure. You don't design for failure, but you plan for and manage risk. There will be risky moves that you make. Obviously, we don't want to combine risk and security, right? But so the risk is typically more around the investment in the direction versus, oh, I'm just going to move data and hope that it's secure. That has to be bulletproof. But the risk is that I refer to is more around the lines of designing for having your data in the cloud. When you design to have your data in the cloud and you get the right support to secure that data, and it enables a business outcome or some efficiencies in deriving that business outcome, that is always going to still be a risk. The last is, I think people have heard a lot about, digital transformation. People are beating the drum around agile organizations, but it is, as you move IT into IaaS and your business applications into the PaaS and SaaS environments, you're really going to have no choice but to become a more agile organization in order to survive. I mean, obviously you want to do it to take advantage and make sure you're constantly course correcting. You're evaluating what's out there. You're trying to innovate, be ahead of the curve. So that's all the pluses of being agile. There are minuses. If you aren't agile, you're not continually assessing, and you're going down a path that perhaps without data to drive those decisions, to make change and so agile aspect of the organization, driven by data is a key. I won't talk too much about this. I think people have seen this, but this just talks about a little bit of the cloud journey, a typical cloud journey where a migration is involved. Discovery, analysis, foundational planning, foundational build, migration, optimization, and operations. These are somewhat high level concepts, but you show the difference here between going the cloud native route versus a more traditional route where you're kind of the bottom line might be more of a lift and shift approach where you're kind of using a move and improve methodology. But over time, the idea is that you are increasing your value as part of your cloud move. And, so all of this is about achieving value. And so, as we mentioned, that journey, navigating that journey requires knowledge, expertise, all of that good stuff. But it requires a heavy focus on optimization, not only of operations, but of push down into development and applications. We'll get into a little bit of a discussion later, but you can have the strongest IT and operations shop, but if your applications aren't, don't have are not architected well and they're brittle, it's not going to be pretty, no matter whether you're running it on-prem or in the cloud. So Innervision has a cloud migration process. For those that have maybe stalled out on a migration or looking to do a migration, I won't drain this, but as Jennifer mentioned, we are a premier Amazon member. We have our migration competency, which is a pretty extensive approval process that you go through. It looks at the size and complexity and number of migrations, your methodology, et cetera. That is something that we are extremely strong in, and we have a migration methodology process that, again, I won't necessarily go into it, but it is extremely important to make sure you're not taking on migrations or any kind of major cloud work without the right kind of expertise and support. And in our case, Innervision can be there to provide that if that's the case. So what are some keys to successful cloud optimization? Well, I think at one point this slide was just a big list of optimize this and optimize that. So I tried to make it a little bit more specific to some areas that I tend to focus on. And so first one, unused infrastructure and services. You'd be surprised, and I'm sure we've gone through this. You'll find EBS volumes unattached. You've got services that somebody spun up and didn't really know what it was, and 3 months later, there's $12,000 in bills because this service has just been running. Optimize compute, storage, and data. Every time a EC2 type is deprecated and a new one is put in its place, the costs roughly are half of what the prior type EC2 type model is. And storage, there are tiers of S3 storage. If you're not looking at a life cycle for managing that, you are missing out on enormous savings, as the second tier underneath the standard S3 is half the price. The third one, engage professional financial operation services. This is, I can speak from our point of view, Innervision's point of view. We have a financial operation service. I do think that it is an emerging capability that is available to customers. Ours is relatively mature compared to the market, but what it is a kind of if people are aware of reserved instances and saving plans, it's kind of an extension of that, but it's the concept of hedging around those resources and managing that pool across a broader set of consumers. So not just one client and its consumption, but multiple clients, being able to hedge around more flexible plans with more aggressive savings for customers over and above the savings that you can get with reserved instances or savings plans. So what happens is that the financial operations take on larger risk profiles, but offer more flexibility because they can shift those resources around and manage that risk. And it is not just a cloud health or a cloud checker, or it is a it is a manned, or one person, I should say, who is literally looking at, actively monitoring spend and resources, and bouncing that against plans that are possible from a financial perspective. And it's a much more active approach than just staying up on top of your reserve instance and savings plan, and allows you to our clients to commit to higher levels of that without the risk of their compute falling below that, and they're still paying for the reserved or savings plan instance. Optimized applications. I think we've been talking about this a lot, but if you are lifting and shifting your applications, and you do not, so you do the move and you don't look to do the improve, you are signing up for a costly OpEx model for those applications. At a minimum, you should be looking to take advantage of PaaS, so RDS. Look to containerize, and then obviously if you can get to serverless, but just in general, you should have a continual agenda to optimize your applications, and that'll pay benefits for operations as well. Optimize team efficiency. If you think about your headcount that you've got, whether it's your operations team, your development team, and you look for ways to save them time, it adds up extremely quickly. Automation, CI/CD automation. I mean, everyone's been talking about DevOps. There's Cloud Ops. Automation is just one aspect of that, but it is a extremely important aspect of that. And then design for governed cost efficiency. In the example where I talked about that service that was spun up, and 3 months later they had a $12K bill, what we're doing with that client is making sure that we implement the right kind of INAM roles and privileges, so that we are limiting the number of people that can spin up services, and then putting a process around that for the approval of that as well, which may feel like overhead, but in some cases that overhead is absolutely necessary, and that overhead can be lightweight in nature, right? And maybe in some cases it's really just an audit situation where you're auditing those types of activities, and not necessarily get in the way of them. So it's not pre-approved, but there's more accountability associated with it. All right, so I think I'm going to move into this question.
Hey, Mike.
Oh,
hey, Mike.
Yeah, sure.
We have a question that came in, and it came in. It says, we have some concerns with cloud solution with Innervision, just because of the size Innervision is globally. So how does Innervision support a cloud solution on a global enterprise?
That's a great question. We have a number of clients that have locations. When you look at a cloud perspective and a delivery for it, it really does open up a virtual landscape. So at any given day in Innervision, we are working in instances of Amazon globally. So whether it's someone in Ireland, the Philippines, so we have the ability to it drops the boundaries, the barriers to support for organizations that are global, and we have a number of global organizations that we support in that perspective. We also have follow the sun, as we mentioned, our NOC and our SOC. So we do have 7x24 and people that are and architects that are overseas that support our operations. So I think the combination of the accessibility of, and frankly, you need to have that knowledge. When we see clients, one of the things you do on the financial side is try to understand, what services are they running, but where are they running? It may be, some may know on this call, others may not, but it really depends on where you are spinning up those services and the cost profile for those services. And it differs greatly depending on where you're doing that work. So we have not found challenges in supporting global organizations. And I think, in fact, our model, I don't necessarily mention this anywhere else in the presentation, but we have a remote delivery model. So when COVID hit, we have, many of our architects are already, if not all of our architects, but we do have some that we're working and working directly, with client on site, but supported a remote delivery model. So we've got folks all over the US that are working with clients that are inside and outside of the US and in a remote delivery model. So we are optimized for that. Hopefully I answered that question. I threw out some. Okay. I will say that we'd love to be doing this in person because an interactive mode is so much more effective, I think. So
You're doing great, Mike. You're doing great. You're doing great.
All right, thanks. It's good to hear a voice. Hey, so keys to successful cloud operations. So when I'll share a story that is most indicative of this, and that is a client that we're working with right now that has a global presence, and they have development offshore, they have production offshore and production onshore. I mean, as in workloads running in Amazon. And as we've been working with them, one of the things that their initiative that they're tackling right now is they're designing the call it the happy place. And so to kind of translate that to you all, they kind of entered the cloud, a while ago, right? So they would be considered a brownfield or a mature, cloud presence. But at the time, they didn't really kind of think through the foundation. So how are their accounts laid out? How, what are the guardrails associated with their roles and responsibility? What is the automation associated with that? What are the base supporting tools for that? There's a host of things that need to be taken care of in that base foundation. What they're doing is they're building the happy place out, which is this foundation, and they're going to migrate to it. So it's not a migration into Amazon; it's a migration within Amazon to a more secure and reliable and compliant foundation. And so that's key. If you're not operating from that, then you are already disadvantaged. Automation, I mean, people talk about automation so much, right? And everybody's capable of some level of automation. So the challenge that you have is everybody's automating in some way, shape, or form. Or at least that's a problem you can have. There may be people listening going, well, I don't have that problem. We don't have any automation. If you don't see us, we'll help you with that. But a challenge that you can have is unregulated automation. So the cloud makes it very simple to automate. Everything's an API. But not every automation is good. And so I think, having an understanding and an active, process around setting your standards for automation, around the tools, what you're automating, it's extremely important as part of automation operations, because ultimately automation is meant to eliminate risk. But when you have different flavors of automation and ungoverned automation, it introduces risk. And then all of a sudden you've got operational support that has to try to kind of unwind or understand or troubleshoot automation that they did not develop. It's not a good place to be. Next one, cloud native service selection. So I'm not saying that you want to embrace every native cloud service. That's not what this bullet point is about. But it is about understanding and making smart selections when it comes to cloud native services. When you're talking about using cloud native for your applications and for your data analysis, looking at the best way to kind of monitor and manage those solutions is going to be found in a cloud native service. And so leveraging that sometimes in combination with other third parties, whether it's firewall or host-based analysis. I'm not saying that you won't augment it. It will be an augmented cast of solutions, but making sure you're smart about native and understanding that native evolves. Amazon in particular, continually evolving their services. As we've mentioned before, just staying on top of them is a challenge, but it's also a good thing. I mentioned that CloudWatch, the synthetic transactions. I mean, it's continually evolving, and it's evolving based on experience and trying to improve operations for clients. So leveraging those native solutions, which will evolve and grow with you, is important. Cloud optimization agenda for applications. So I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but you can have, you've kind of selected all the right tools. You have the best monitoring. You've just designed that so well, but then you have an application that is brittle and fails, and so of course every time it goes down, IT and operations have to go through certain hoops to determine if what the problem is before it gets promoted to a tier 2, tier 3, where you start to get some application support. But in the meantime, all tiers of the service management were engaged, and that's not good, right? So we can't let can't keep our eyes. You got to keep your eyes on the prize here, and that is well-formed applications that are optimized for cloud. That are self-healing in nature, self-scaling, designed for failure, and that's just not that's not a turnkey. That's not turnkey, right? So that's one. In fact, that's one of the challenges, right, for adoption. And then this note over here that I think people, I know Chris put this in here. It is impactful. And it's a Gartner note that through 2022, insufficient cloud skills will delay half of enterprise IT organizations' migration to the cloud by 2 years or more. That's a long time. It doesn't really talk about the size of the organization, because we know organizations that take years just to work through the migration, even if they were doing it correctly. But a 2-year delay in a process where you are paying probably in both cloud and on-prem to operate those resources while in that transition mode is a costly proposition, right? So so that's something to be aware of. So I do have kind of a point for all of this, and I'm going to be teeing up our AWS friends here, but I don't know if folks are familiar with Amazon's AMS service. It's managed service for running, operating businesses in the cloud. So cloud platform solution. We have partnered with Amazon around this and provide some services wrapping that. And so the combination of those looks like this from an offering perspective. And that is Amazon's managed services, which is landing zone, service portal, automation. I won't get into it because I know that there's going to be a lot of some discussion about that. But suffice to say that it is well architected, best practices. I mean, it lines up, and not that I build it this way, but it just naturally occurs. But the secure, reliable, compliant foundation, the automation, native services. Doesn't cover the last one, which is the optimizing your applications. You're still on the hook for that, but the rest and includes additionally patch and backup, instant management. There's just a host of automation and services wrapped around it that provides essentially allows you to outsource that operation to Amazon. And Innervision wraps around all sorts of services as part of that service from Amazon. And I think we're in a pretty unique and pioneering relationship with Amazon in providing that service. So some benefits, if you don't have to worry about how you operate in production, and that you are starting off with, and know that you are getting a kind of best of breed foundation, it's stable and secure, then you can just concentrate on migrations and looking at other ways to bring value to your business without worrying about those, production. Operational costs, it talks about an ROI of up to 243% around. I think a lot of that is due to the rigor and controls, the guardrails that are in place as part of that, and the automation, and again, the fact that it frees up your time to focus on other things. Compliance and security standards, obviously it's designed first for that, so it is built into that footprint and the processes to support that footprint. And then just the fact that between Innervision and Amazon, we have the ability to not only look at operational tasks but support other work streams associated with that, whether it's CI/CD, DevOps, to deliver change into production, the refactoring of applications to serverless, et cetera, things that you need to do to improve outside of operations that we talked about. And then, so this is my last slide, and then you won't have to hear from me anymore, although I may be participating in questions or panel. So if you're paying attention since the start, Jennifer did actually show this slide already. I won't drain the right side, but the left side, I'm fond of, and that is the services. As you all know, I lead our cloud services, and these are the areas that we support. And one of them you'll notice is SysOps. So we do look at supporting, but we provide support for, managed support for in situations where AMS is not necessarily a fit for the organization, as well as solutions across all these other capabilities.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Fantastic. Really appreciate this. I'm going to take over, and while I'm doing some transitions, we have another question, which I think is a perfect tee up. It's going to, we have Ken is asking, what are the key differences between AWS and Microsoft's Azure? I think you're going to learn a lot about AWS and what it does as we move into the next session. But right now, it is raffle time, and I have even more exciting news. Chris Cruz has joined us. He's back from his around the world trip, and I think he went to the moon, and he's back. And so, Chris, I'm going to transition to you, and welcome. We're really excited. I'm really excited you're here.
I'm excited to be here, guys. I am very sorry that I missed this first part of the session. The joys of the new reality. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Michael. I know you did a great job. I was able to join in for.
I'm sorry, I went over. I was in full screen mode. I had no idea what time was, so I apologize.
I kept tapping you. It's okay. It happens.
We'll keep it breezy and we'll make up for lost time here. So I'm the director of cloud marketing here at InterVision. But probably more importantly, just really quickly, as promised, between each presentation here, we're as a way to say thank you for taking your time out of your day to join. So the winner of our first Bose SoundLink Bluetooth speaker is Jeff Hamer at HOK. So Jeff, I know you're on the line. It looks like you're in attendance right now. We're going to reach out to you for your best address to send this off to, but thank you so much for joining us, and you're our first winner today. And so now we're going to pass things over to the AWS team to talk about AMS. As Mike touched on, we're extremely excited about to deliver this solution, and we're going to talk a little bit about the value that the AMS solution brings to the client. So I'm going to turn it over to Danielle and her team, and we can go ahead and go on with our presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Donnell, hopefully you can see the slides, and happy for you to introduce us. I think she's getting her audio.
Yeah, Donnell, we're not getting your audio. We'll give you a second, but we may have to keep moving.
All right. Looks like we continue to be challenged with the work from home based webinar. I think everybody's dealing with it, so I'm sure everybody understands some of the fun. But my name's Mike Eshu. I'm a technical program manager with AWS. Specifically, I'm on the AWS Managed Services team, and I'm joined by my colleague Donnell, who's one of our business development managers and been doing a lot of partnership with InterVision, thinking about how we can go to market together, delivering exactly what Mike was able to cover. And then I'm also joined by Forrest Johns, who's really our principal product manager on the AMS team. Forrest, you want to say hello just so folks can orient to your voice, and frankly, you get a sound check in? Forrest? Right. Well, Forrest, if you work through your audio and you're able to join in and speak, maybe say hello at some point of time, and we'll make sure. Otherwise, we'll work through it as we transition over to you. Donnell, were you able to get your audio working? All right. Well, sorry for that, but we'll get going. So, what we're really going to talk about, and really just build on what Mike Shea had gone over. Right. I loved the detail he brought into his presentation, because we're going to stay up a little bit higher, in the stack around how AWS is thinking about helping customers move to the cloud, and really relying on partners such as InterVision to help customers such as yourself make that transition, right? And so we're going to talk about a couple of the facts or the statistics that was brought up. We were able to work with Forrester and commissioned a study of return on investment customers had made working with partners enjoying the benefits of AWS via Amazon Managed Services. And so we'll talk a little bit about how that whole stack works. But I love this visual, right? Because I think it really ties into what you saw Mike present in terms of that migration journey. And then, of course, Amazon would love to challenge InterVision and frankly, you as the customer to build to a flywheel type approach, right? Because once you go through that process, you're going to find that you've built this machine. Often we'll refer to it as migration factory, where you can leverage your success and rebake it into future workloads. I love the incremental nature of taking a step to cloud. And Mike Shea, I was going to break in and pose a question to you, and perhaps I will towards the end of my session, which is, what is, like, if you had to pick from all of the different areas that you have to cover, and I agreed with all of it, each of that needs to be covered, but one or two things you can do to take that first step cloud. Like, how do you take that first step? I think oftentimes that's so hard. Advice I give customers is don't take a first giant leap. Like, unless you've got, a very compelling event where you need to rapidly exit a data center, try to take small steps in your cloud journey. So you're building that capability, you're building the trust from your business into what IT is able to deliver back. Mike Shea, I don't know if you're on the line, but I'll put you on the spot. What do you think oftentimes that first step is? And then I'll perhaps highlight how that I might believe you can get a good flywheel going as a result of that first step.
Mike, I might have missed that. The first step in.
Yeah, I think all of the steps in your migration journey that Innervision would advocate for really resonated with me. But if I had a customer who's like, but boy, Mike, I know I need to do all those things. How can I take one first step to actually get started on my cloud journey?
I think I use that happy place analogy. It was kind of hilarious to see this client who was, extremely mature in the cloud, kind of going back to designing that foundation, and so you can't do that. You can't spend too much time making sure you've got that in place.
I agree with you, right? And you've got to get that done. And I mean, you essentially led me right into my next slide, right? Is let me explain the transformation flywheel. And I think you and I think about it the same. We've only been working together for a short time, but I think we're well aligned on the business goal and what you're able to do for the business, right? Is to drive migrations, then optimize that which you've migrated, perhaps modernize that which you've optimized, which then opens the door up for innovation, right? Adding new business features, more agilely, more capable, more easy to experiment. Once you're in cloud-enabled technologies, you can easily do blue-green testing or A/B testing because you have the infrastructure at your fingertips. And when you run those experiments and you realize, hey, this didn't really work, no problem, just kill the infrastructure and try another experiment. When you find that it does work, you can bleed over 100% of production traffic, right? So that's like how I could imagine a monolithic app being split up and optimized into cloud and then modernized into serverless type technologies, or perhaps leveraging these different features of auto scaling or AWS Route 50 or Amazon Route 53 to then allow that innovation to occur, right? To me, when I think about getting from migrate to optimize to modernize and innovate, this is the business result, right? This is what IT is able to offer back to the business to really get IT innovation impacting business results. But exactly as you say, Mike, what you have to do is step back and establish the foundation. And this is going to be less interesting to the business. The business probably doesn't care that much about the foundation. They expect it from you. It's table stakes. If you don't have that foundation established and you haven't taken the time to build a migration factory to help bring those applications over in a repeatable, seamless, trustworthy process, your business isn't going to want to take advantage of that, what you want them to do around optimized modernization and innovation. They're not going to be able to enjoy cloud native benefits because you've not built that foundation for them. And they're not going to be interested in coming to IT with new application ideas or new commercial off the shelf software, right? So you have to take the time to build this foundation so that new application demand, cloud native application demand, migration factories, and that foundation itself are in place. And it's not the fancy stuff. Often we say it's differentiated heavy lifting of infrastructure, and in AMS's case, AWS Managed Services, in our case, it's the undifferentiated heavy lifting of IT operations. Nobody likes dealing with patch cycles, but we know we have to do it, right, in order to run a safe, secure, compliant environment. So that's why AMS exists, is to do the stuff that's uninteresting so that Innervision and Innervision's end customers like yourself are able to focus on that which delivers business value around migration, optimization, modernization, and innovation, right? Let's try to push that undifferentiated heavy lifting back to the cloud provider so you don't have to do it. That frees up your resources to do what's really meaningful to the business, hopefully drive revenue or deliver real results to your ultimate end customers, right? And so the challenges that get in the way of you doing that are exactly what we're trying to solve with the model we've built with Innervision, which is we'll look after the security, compliance, scalability, the reliability concerns you might have with Innervision's consulting, right? Out of the box, the AMS landing zone would provide an attestatable PCI environment, a HIPAA eligible environment that's been audited against high trust, ISO, SOC, FedRAMP, tons of compliance we're bringing to the table so that Innervision can help you mold your business applications to take care of that out-of-box compliance and speed your time to value, right? And so then you have these long production timelines to getting to production because you don't have that foundation. But we're going to put that foundation in rapidly, less than a month, essentially as fast as you'll let us go, we can be production ready. And then you don't necessarily need to pull in those skills of cloud migration and post-cloud migration operations so that you can meet the business case you've promised to your CFO. InterVision's going to be able to provide those migration skills or coach you on developing your own competency, but you get through that one-time migration cost, and then you can get back to innovation of new applications, retiring old applications if they have monolithic architectures and so on. Obviously you're going to need robust operations environments to do this. We want to make that easy. We want to take that off the list of blockers as your CIO is diligencing what you might need to do to get to production. Look, we've brought in trusted vendors. They offer this SLA. We're buying this SLA from them. So dear CIO, dear VP operations, like we've covered all our bases. We believe we have a robust environment. We've been through game day simulations and DR drills and the following. So we believe we're ready to go into production. Instead of taking months or years to get there, we can get there in weeks, right? And then you need spend models that are flexible with what you're doing. So as you experiment with a little or a lot, or if you have to step back in that experiment, you should have flexible pricing. And so we're able to build a model with InterVision where we can bill on a month-to-month basis without contract. So what InterVision is built upon, and I thought Mike's slide articulated it really well in terms of all the value that needs to be delivered on top of AMS. Remember, we're down here delivering this undifferentiated infrastructure operations with cloud experts. We're fueled by automation. We offer this secure and compliant landing zone, and you can see the different compliances we advocate. We have ongoing cost optimization, so helping InterVision with that at the infrastructure level, where they're going to be able to help you design in more cost-effective application patterns. No vendor lock-in, right? These models and these contracting vehicles aren't going to lock you into AMS. We're not going to say, hey, for InterVision to sell you AMS, we need to have a 5-year contract. No, we're happy to sell month to month. So no contracts from that perspective, and then month-to-month based billing with consumption-based pricing, right? So again, you're only paying what you use, both for your services as well as for your underlying cloud infrastructure. And we've built all of this on standard AWS tools, and then the customer or InterVision remains ownership of that account. So it's not something AWS owns that we can't keep you out of. It's really your property that InterVision and AMS operate with them. And so, the scope of AMS, I think it was summed up best by that multi-layer slide that Mike presented. So I'll go over this quite quickly. Supporting that infrastructure level AWS operations up to the patched operating system. So through provisioning and onboarding, security and compliance, which I've really kind of focused on, again, highlighting our operational capabilities below, monitoring and alerting, insights and cost optimization. Patch and backup, boy, I mean, it's so easy to say patch and backup. Anybody that works in IT operations appreciates how challenging that can be. Wrapping the whole of AWS in a change management layer if your model requires preventative controls. We can certainly support that versus giving unfettered access to AWS APIs. Leading incident management with an infrastructure related, supporting you in doing that. If that means escalating up to an operating system vendor through AWS support, where we white glove that. Leading infrastructure incidents and so on, and then ultimately supporting service integration if we need to integrate AWS APIs or InterVision APIs back to your service management suite. We've done that with several customers. It's quite easy to do. So with that, hopefully that gives you a quick high-level view of AMS. I think the idea of InterVision delivering the value-added services on top of AMS makes a ton of sense for a turnkey solution for a customer to get successful migrating into cloud or building new capabilities or serverless applications in cloud. Take those first steps, and I'm really pleased to introduce Forrest Johns, who's going to take you through really that statistic that Mike Shea introduced around, I believe it was a 243% ROI benefit that our colleagues at Forrester, through their independent research, again, chartered by AWS, was able to observe. So Forrest, how's that audio coming, and are you ready to take over the screen and present your content?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, you're coming through loud and cleared. So we're going to pass the buck over to you, Forrest, now.
Indeed.
Okay, just a second here. Jennifer, can you grab that? I'm actually not able to.
And while we do that, of course, we're in the Q&A box. So if you have any questions for us at AWS as it relates to what AMS is doing, what AWS is doing, we're pleased to answer that in the chat, and we can get a multi-layer engagement going here in the webinar. But again, thanks so much to the InterVision team for having us, and I'm excited to hear what Forrest got once we get his share going.
All right, looks like I have control now. So let me just.
Perfect. Sorry about the delay there, guys.
Forrest was sharing, he's got his kids at home today. What was it? It was Hawaiian lunch day for Forrest and the kids today. So, though I wish every day was Hawaiian lunch day because I enjoy how Forrest is dressed for the webinar.
Yeah, exactly. And I may get video bomb of my kids running here. Apologies in advance.
And
But
Forrest, you've got the presenter view projecting. So I don't know if you might want to share the other screen.
yeah, let me see if I can do the stop sharing.
Mike, I'm on the other side. I think the work from home webinar is more exciting. It's a little more authentic, a little less scripted. We're here dealing with the same challenges everybody is. So good fun.
Hey, Forrest, if you share again, I'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here, and I've took it off. I have two monitors, so hopefully that's better.
Yep, you've got it for us. Now we're
Fantastic.
seeing this
Great.
the presentation view, the right view, the whole slide.
There we go. All right, well, let me just I'll kick it off. Like the reason we did this, we've long philosophized that we have an impact with customers, not just like the operating outcomes, but also accelerating things. And because time and again, we've had our customers come to us and say, we want to move in, and give us some prescriptive guidance, right? And so generally, what we've done is we've come to the customer with 1,000 answers, right? They may not like all of them, and we can tweak, the 1-200 to fit their business, but that's a lot better than going to a customer and saying, here's 1,000 questions, and let's work through each and every one of them. You can see how like the delay can end up, taking place there. And so what we did is, we wanted this to be blind, impartial, non-influenced by us. Obviously, it's a study that we engaged Forrester for here. They had models that, were really good in terms of, representing the total economic impact. And what they did essentially is, focus on 5 of our customers who, have been running with us the longest, and also had considered doing it themselves. And I guess that's really what we looked at. So the TEI framework that Forrester put together is different than the TCO and ROI because it takes in some of these other categories here, right? So in addition to just the IT impact and the cost and cost savings, there was also and the business impact, like what is the impact to they also looked at things like risk mitigation, reward, and flexibility, right? Some of these intangibles. And so later in the slides I have, we'll kind of walk through a few of those and just where they saw some of those benefits that, aren't necessarily traditionally quantifiable, but, based on some of the other research they did, were obviously impactful to the end outcome for the customers. Let's see if I can advance my slide here. So as I mentioned, it's a multi-step approach here. And what we really had to do is just give the context to to Forrester, right? So we positioned them with the stakeholders that we worked with day in, day out. They were crucial in the migration and the initial business decision. Had done all the studying on their side in terms of why they made the decision to go with the service, and came back essentially in an interview setting where they presented data. Again, we were no part, and it was really them telling their story. This was details they weren't obviously shared with us either, right? Because they obviously made their decisions on their own. And so, with those interviews, what they attempted to do, because they didn't want to make it identifiable to each of these customers, is they used the data essentially to create a composite customer, right? And then looked at the impacts across all these different categories for each of the individual customers to kind of have this mock customer or persona that would show the influence, right? And then that could be more broadly applied to people doing. This is our survey here. Broadly applied to other customers, who may or may not, have relations to that composite customer, but it was more generic in the sense that they could probably more do so, right? And we actually try to get a really good smattering of our customers across different industries and verticals. And for us, it was important that we came out with a couple things, right? So there's this financial model, a case study, and then the thing that we got out of it was a calculator so that customers could input their details and then sort of in their particular situation come up with a result, and so they could see if they had similar impacts to their business. Okay, and in terms of reviewing and finalizing the results, we had to figure that out. So in terms of disclosure, so obviously we have the full case study here, and it's available for download. You know, we commissioned it with Forrester directly. Forrester made no assumptions, you know, on the returns, and really, you know, we provided the data that we would provide any of our customers in terms of decision making, and they were, you know, they came to their own conclusions using their models and their experience. We reviewed and provided feedback, but we made no changes to the study, right? So there were some clarifications and positioning of the case study and the wording. And, you know, originally when we first looking at it, we did focus heavily on the migration acceleration output of it, but obviously there's a huge operate advantage to our service as well. And so we used that as an opportunity to highlight some of those. You know, for example, one of our customers saw a 50% reduction in operate incidents. And then obviously the time to resolution was much quicker too. Go to the next slide here. So in terms of the customer profile and the experience with AMS, you know, the needs were pretty consistent across all our customers. A lot of them realized they didn't have the skill set, right? And there's always this idea that you can hire, train, and retain to fill the skill gap, but that is a longer proposition. You know, it takes time to train people out, particularly if you're retasking individuals who are used to doing on-premise. You know, the tool chains are different, the responsibilities different. The other aspect here is that often teams will pivot to a DevOps team. Those individuals are more in the app space, and now when you're asking them to take on fields of responsibility that they generally didn't have experience with, right? So networking, the security management piece, authentication. Like as an app owner, these are generally things that are provided to you by your central IT group, and so in the cloud, having that responsibility in addition to the ongoing, you know, maintenance and operations and all the application migration stuff, we found was just overloading those individuals and essentially stalling them out. So the lack of experience was a big thing. The other one that these customers had in common was an aggressive migration timeline, right? They had a pending contract expiration. They had to get out of a data center. Some of them were spun out, so they had to actually get out by a certain date, otherwise pay penalties. And others were just trying to, like say, hardware refresh, right? They had a 5-year refresh coming up, and they didn't want to have to spend that money if they really wanted to get to the cloud. So they all had some kind of compelling event that was motivating them to move quickly. Otherwise, if you don't have that, it gets very difficult to have a unified cloud approach, because you have to have executive leadership as well as the central IT group and the application teams all agreeing. And when you have, you know, essentially this compelling event, it's much easier to get that consensus and alignment. All of them also needed to select an operating and migration partner, right? They didn't, because of lack of experience, believe that they could operate themselves, right? And the migration partner obviously was another big selection piece. One that's not on here that I'll add in as well is that a lot of them were in regulated environments, right, where the cost of failure was significant. You know, it's very easy to get going in the cloud and put things up, but to go through the effort to then prove that you meet PCI, HIPAA, ISO, SOC, you know, GDPR, et cetera, is a time-consuming affair. And so they needed a risk mitigation aspect of the solution. So as much of that was taken care of out of the box as possible. The requirements here is, you know, they had, you know, a partner to complete the migration with low risk, right? So like when we see these migrations, that's a big factor. It's the tech actually becomes secondary. The toolchain fit is obviously a consideration of it, but in the day, they need to minimize the risk. Because that's the biggest thing. Like if they're moving a production application across, they can't have prolonged outages. They can't put themselves in a worse compliance position an auditability standpoint. And so for them, when they were selecting a partner, they really looked for a way to minimize that risk. And then the knowledge and expertise, obviously, to migrate the application and over to the cloud. That was another big piece, right? So having that capability as well was very important. Okay. So the results, you know, that we saw, you know, with these customers that we picked is that, you know, they were fully optimized in their operations. They had stronger security posture, faster time to operate, and really enabled business transformation. Some of the slides that Mike covered before really spoke to that, right? If you've got all this other work to do, you're going to have less bandwidth to do the work that really matters to your business, which is the applications. Because in the day, operations, if you do it well, nobody really notices. But if you do it poorly, obviously that becomes a real impediment to your business and your agility. Also, what we find too is, rigorous old world processes transported to the cloud don't give you that agility promise either, right? If you're still taking 3 months to do a change approval, you haven't pre-approved, templates that have been reviewed for well architecture. If you don't understand, the baseline for your connectivity, all that is going to be repeated on every single app migration. And so, really what this does is move the customer in a templated prescriptive way that's already pre-approved, and therefore it's really just dealing with the application pieces. Another thing here is that these are global 2000s, large enterprises. So the threshold for us is $1 billion in annual revenue. We looked at a composite here, 5,000 plus instances or hosts to migrate. They all had aggressive timelines, very large customer base, large employees, and they're all global in their operations. So this isn't a single region. This is a global affair. And DR and failover on a regional basis is a real thing, both from a compliance perspective, also from just the standpoint of making sure that business continuity. Go back. This is just one of the quotes, from one of the customers that was surveyed here, and what they were really looking for is basically an all-in solution. Obviously, they wanted to maintain the agility for their applications, but as it related to the infrastructure, and we often cover things like foundations, migrations, operations, they needed a solution for all three. And from this perspective, this particular customer was really looking to okay, what are the parts of the business that I want to retain that are important to me, and what are the ones I'm okay actually letting somebody else handle them. Right. And so from a perspective of us laying down the landing zone, bringing that prescriptive belief, helping assist with the acceleration of the migration, and then doing the ongoing operations, they were able to have that all happen with the service. So in terms of the output of the study, so obviously the high level hit here is the return on investment, right? And so what they really compared is, if a customer was to do this themselves, what would AMS in the picture, right? And so when they looked at various categories here, and there were 6, right? So the resource and cost avoidance. So this is having to hire people to do the migration as well as do the ongoing operation, right? Configure the accounts, actually do the work, and continue to support that. Then the other category here was the cost savings from accelerating the migration. So because they could actually accelerate it, a lot of the costs that they would have incurred with a more delayed migration didn't happen. So for example, data center lease costs, hardware refreshes, being able to have to continue to support like that on-premise. If you can get out of the data center a year earlier, that has a significant savings. And then the optimized resource efficiency gain. So this was really, having the people with the skill set stay one, and again, not having to hire additional people, and then reducing the actual impact of outages and events, right? So if you have incidents, the frequency of the incidents are reduced simply because you've done a lot of the prescriptive upfront stuff. But then the ones you do have, it's much easier to get out of them quicker because again, you've got a lot of automation and prescriptive guidance on how to do that. One of our customers, we work with them, particularly on their key production applications, to have a run book for restoration, and to work with them in a partnership in a war room setting to actually restore their workloads. In fact, we do game days proactively ahead of time. And so again, there's some savings there as it relates to that. The management of the infrastructure fees. So this is, again, cost savings in terms of having AMS do the ongoing operate versus having to hire and retain staff to do it themselves. And because we are heavily automated, we're in tune of like 88% on all activities, we can keep our costs very low, and we pass those back on to customers. And so we don't view ourselves as really a replacement for an in-house team, but more of an augmentation, right? And a skill gap augment. Okay, and then obviously through improved, so, Forrester brought research to the table in terms of, when customers have security events and security impacts, what is the overall cost of the business? And so that was the 5th category. And then, when your websites are down, in this particular composite study, it was a e-commerce customer that they picked, they don't have financial transactions. There's loss of trust with their customers, and, they can't continue to process orders, and therefore impacts operationally and security wise have, a bottom line impact on their business. And so when they looked at, the net present value, across what it would have cost themselves to do it versus what they would do it with AMS, these are kind of the results I saw, right? So there's a lot more details in the study. They kind of walk through each of the categories, what was actually selected for each, and just overall very detailed in terms of how they do it. These are the additional benefits that they wanted to include in the study, although they weren't quantifiable, right? So the ones I mentioned before, dollars and cents, that they were able to attribute based on research and their experience in the composite and actual data they got back from the customers that were interviewed. These are the more intangible ones, which are hard to put a dollar figure amount, but we felt it was important to include them because they actually are transformational, right? So the first one, enablement of innovation, right? So the agility of applications is key. And as a lot of these traditional businesses are being disrupted, being able to move quicker and listen to their customers and innovate, take on an agile development method, get features out sooner, take feedback with small incremental steps and releases, freeing up your app team from the day-to-day undifferentiated operations component of this and figuring out landing zones which do nothing to enable the innovation allows that team now to focus 100% almost on that, right? So not just freeing the team up, but if you can provision fully compliant, well-architected stacks and infrastructure in minutes, and test your theories and environments, that enables the whole business to move quicker. And so that's kind of where we looked at this enablement of innovation is like, if you've got teams that are now empowered on their own to iterate quickly, but within the guardrails that have been defined for the business from a security operate and corporate control standpoint, that makes everything go quicker, right? Which should in turn, make the customers happier with the end products and the company more successful. That's a lot of the philosophy that we use with our service and many AWS services ourselves. The other intangible here was guaranteed adherence to cloud operational best practices, right? So when you have a bunch of bespoke teams doing shadow IT or doing it in a desynchronized manner, some will do well, some will do not well, depending on the skill sets they have and their aptitude in the operational work and their focus, right? A lot of people on deadlines and security operations best practices are generally under pressure in those scenarios to move quicker. And so concessions are made, and rarely do teams double back because, again, once they're live, they now have operational issues, scaling issues they have to attend to. So a lot of the fast follow things that we all intend generally don't end up happening because you're going to need host of problems now that you're live. And so having a guarantee, like I said, that you could deploy this infrastructure and have it work out of the box as intended, meet the majority of your infrastructure guidelines in terms of security and compliance, so you don't have to worry about that, was again a huge enabler to the app teams to move quicker, right? And then security and compliance is also happy too, because now they're not having to individually and bespokely inspect everything and hold up releases by asking the same questions over and over again for people that didn't follow the process. The other one was the cost optimization. And so this is very much an Amazon principle. We want our customers to spend less with us, right? We proactively identify cost savings. It's not just price reductions, absent competitive pressure, but we also look for underutilization, right? So tools like Trusted Advisor are a great example of that, where there are checks that say, hey, you're underutilized here. This particular host could probably be downsized, or you could get rid of it or collapse it or consolidate. We are, burning that trust with our customers by showing them how they can basically not waste their money. And that is embodied in AMS as well. One of our functions is, we call it financial and capacity management, where we're always looking for opportunities to actually reduce the spend. Now that has an impact as well of reducing our fee because we're a derivative of the underlying AWS usage. But we believe that's necessary for customers to then be freed up and enabled to actually do the things that are innovative and will actually end up driving more growth, right? If you trust that workloads you put on, you're going to get the most for your money, you're going to be more inclined to put more workloads on. And so that was a big piece of this that we wanted to include as sort of an additional outcome. The fact that you are having a trusted partner looking over your shoulder, questioning whether or not you're using things the most effectively. And then peace of mind. So again, just having somebody with experience at scale with some of the world's largest enterprises handling your day-to-day operations on your behalf, but with full transparency, I think provides a certain amount of peace of mind to these large enterprises, right? And this, is an alternative approach where we're using native AWS tools like CloudTrail, CloudWatch, CloudWatch logs. Customers have read-only roles. They can go in, they can audit, do their own aggregation of logs in their own tools outside of us, and it's very open and transparent. We do not take a black box approach where it's just trust us, we're fine, and to see what we're doing, you have to audit us with specific requests. It's fully open at all times, and we believe that's, again, is a way to build trust with customers and to make them feel that they can do their own audit and analysis beside us to keep us accountable and honest on our due diligence as well. So that was another one that doesn't necessarily have a dollar amount, but was, I believe, very critical to. Okay, well, that's my section.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Forrest. Really appreciate having you guys on and going through that material. It's obviously very valuable impact, both the soft side and the financial side of the AMS offering. So thanks again for diving into all that detail there. For everyone in attendance, we have reached the point where we're ready to run through another raffle if there aren't any questions. But of course, keep your questions coming, and we'll have the team on to address them as they come up. Go ahead and pull up a few slides here, but also we've got our next winner for the raffle here. So let's see here. It is Pierre St. Fleur from Travelers Insurance. So Pierre, thank you so much for attending. Again, we'll have an Innervision rep reaching out to you to get your preferred address. But please, if you can respond to that, we will get your Bose SoundLink Bluetooth speaker sent your way. So thanks again for joining. Moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about IT resilience in the cloud. And again, we have Brian from Zerto joining us for this conversation. But before we dive into to that conversation, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our focus on IT resilience in the cloud and our disaster recovery as a service solution. So for the last 10 years or so, Innervision has refined our disaster recovery as a service offering and expanded its capabilities. And we're very, very proud of the fact that since the inception of both the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Disaster Recovery as a Service and the Forrester Wave for Disaster Recovery as a Service, we've been recognized every year. So that's 5 years in a row for the Gartner Magic Quadrant, for example. And we really believe that that is a recognition of our commitment to offering a very comprehensive approach to disaster recovery. Everything from designing and implementing the runbooks to the ongoing support to the replication and the management of recovery events if and when they need to occur. So our solution is very much designed to be that fully managed approach to deliver complete confidence in your disaster recovery capabilities. And we believe that commitment is reflected in our client feedback. We have a 5-star rating on independent review sites G2 Crowd, as well as Gartner's own Peer Insights online review source that you can view there, where you can see people's satisfaction with our disaster recovery as a service. And our disaster recovery as a service offering has a Net Promoter Score of 90. And for those of you who are familiar with how Net Promoter Score works, anything above 50 is considered to be quote unquote world class. And a big part of how we drive our value through our disaster recovery as a service offering is through our partnership with Zerto. And that's why we've had Zerto join us as a key partner here today to talk a little bit more about IT resilience in the cloud. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Brian at Zerto, and so we can get this conversation rolling. Brian, you can go ahead and take it away.
Good deal. Thank you for the introduction. We'll get started. Sharing my screen. Okay, can everyone hear me okay, first and foremost?
Coming in loud and clear.
Yep. Sound check. Check, check.
Glad to hear it. Okay, so I'll take you through our IT resilience platform and our journey to the cloud. So what is our vision? So at Zerto, we want to enable an uninterrupted world for all technology users, consumers, and businesses. We've been around since 2009, and we have 8,000 or over 8,000 customers globally. Well, what do we want to do? We really want to use our platform to converge cloud mobility, disaster recovery, and backup into a single, simple, easy-to-use platform. So for whether it's mobility to the cloud in this case, disaster recovery to the cloud, backup, we want to put that all into a single console, into a single solution that's easy to support, manage, and deploy. So we enable your journey to AWS, the cloud, in a secure way. We enable your organizations with compliance. As your data grows, as your environment grows, we grow with you. We scale up and we scale out. And we support new features and platforms. As time evolves, we will evolve with your business. As a business, you need to manage all disruptions, both unplanned and planned. For disaster recovery, of course, you have infrastructure failures or site outages and natural disasters. As been, hurricanes, tornadoes, that sort of thing. Definitely hurricanes down in our part of the country in Texas is something we're concerned about. It can be both a planned and unplanned event. Ransomware, which of course is constantly in the news. It seems like every week or every other day we see a large organization that is either massively impacted, forced to pay for the recovery from ransomware, or in some cases even shuts their doors because they're unable to recover. We have operational recovery, things like user errors. Someone deletes a file by accident, for example, or corrupts a SQL database, or deletes a table, things you can recover from using our solution. On top of that, long-term retention. So in addition to our ability to recover from disasters and operational events, we want to enable that long-term retention of data to facilitate compliance when data needs to be maintained. For things like planned events or application mobility, whether you have a planned migration event to the cloud, you can certainly enable that. You're protecting to the cloud, or you just want to use this additionally for dev, test, or future deployments. Let's say, for example, you want to figure out what the actual migration of a server into AWS would look like. You can use this to seamlessly test that before the actual event is planned to take place. So in the past, we had an issue, or most organizations have issues where they have a number of tools they use to do different things. In this case, you might have a tool for disaster recovery or replication, using a separate tool set or tool for backup, depending on the solutions you protect. And you want to go to cloud. You have a cloud initiative. But how do you get there? You may have a separate vendor or separate set of tools to accomplish that. What we're trying to do is make it a little bit easier and put it all together, because these solutions all innately interact. So our solution enables all three. We provide disaster recovery, operational recovery, long-term retention. Just to be entirely transparent, we don't have long-term retention for AWS quite yet, though it is coming. In the interest of transparency. The journey to the cloud and operational services, we take all of those and wrap them in orchestration and automation and through continuous data protection and help you both protect and recover your data. So how do we do that? Well, we've got four primary pillars. So first, we're continuous block-based replication at the hypervisor level. There are no snapshots. There's no agents to install. We are entirely software-based, which makes us incredibly easy to deploy and service. Our journal. So our continuous journal, or our continuous replication, enables what we call our journal. Think of it as a DVR for your workloads. Not only can you recover your workloads from the most recent point in time, you can recover them from points in time in the past. Our journal has, in many cases, checkpoints in it every few seconds. So, for example, if you wanted to roll back a server upon recovery from an hour ago, or to a point a day ago, or 2 hours and 33 minutes and 10 seconds ago, you could do that using our journal at the point of recovery. Application consistency. So we'll get into more details what these mean in a few slides, but when you recover an application, you're most likely not recovering a single VM. Applications these days can consist of many servers. You might have a SQL server, an application server, maybe a web server. Now, when you recover that application, you're not recovering a single server, you're recovering all of them. And you want to recover them from the same point in time, and we enable that. And simplicity at scale, of course, we scale out. Whether you're protecting a single VM, 10 VMs, 100, or 1,000, the solution looks the same, and it scales out and up with your organization. So always on data protection, again, we are continuous block-based replication with incredibly RPOs. We're software only. There's no hardware to buy. We're storage agnostic, and in a lot of cases, we're version agnostic. So it's very easy to deploy. This can be deployed in production in under an hour. There's no production impact to deployment. If assuming your on-prem environment is vSphere-based, there are no host reboots. There are no vCenter reboots. There are no updates required. And then you just install software and deploy a few components. There's no scheduling, no snapshots or agents. Again, we're continuous block-based replication and hardware agnostic and always replicating. Not going to get too technical here, not going to get too far in the weeds, but this is what our architecture looks like. On-prem, on production, you deploy simply two components. First is a ZVM, which is installed on a Windows-based VM, which is software that provides the orchestration, automation, and the dashboard of our solution. Once you deploy the ZVMs, from within the ZVM interface, you will deploy what are called VRAs, small Linux appliances that live on each host that may be servicing a workload you want to protect. Correspondingly, in AWS, you'll deploy what's called a ZCA, Zerto Cloud Appliance, that takes the functionality of both of those and combines it into a single appliance. It's simply a community-supported AMI, very easy to deploy. Again, this is very easy and practical to deploy in production, non-disruptively. Let's touch on our journal a little bit further. I mentioned earlier that we consider this kind of a DVR for your workloads. As we're continuously replicating, we're also continuously inserting checkpoints into our database. When you go to recover, whether it's a migration or recovery from a previous event or from ransomware infection, you can choose to roll back to any point in our journal. By default, it's set for 24 hours. We usually recommend at least 3 days to cover a weekend. However, it can be set to up to 30 days to give you that level, the ability to operationally recover from any point in time back in the past 30 days. Of course, we're just consuming additional storage to do so. It's worth noting that when replicating AWS, it works even better because we're simply consuming S3 storage. So until you fail over or recover a workload, you just have our ZCA and associated data sitting in S3. So very low cost, very practical. But back to the point, when you do decide to fail over, whether it be a test or live failover or migration, you can fail back to any point in time in our journal or use the latest data. Whatever makes more sense in the situation. On top of that, in our journal, which we consider short-term replication or short-term retention, we also offer long-term retention. Again, this is not yet in AWS, but it is coming. So you have the existing journal, and on top of that, our LTR feature, which is essentially backup. I mentioned earlier about application consistency. So again, when you have an application, whether it be a web application or a CRM application as an example, most likely these things are going to be comprised of many different VMs, many different servers, all serving a small part of that application. Now, traditionally, if you were to recover them using a traditional backup solution, you may get when you go to restore them, you may get one server that's restored from slightly after 11 p.m., maybe another from 1 or 2. Then the larger server recovers from a point in time at 4 o'clock, depending on when their backup window is executed. That's not ideal for recovering an application. Each server will be in an inconsistent state. What you ideally want is the application recovered entirely consistently from the same point in time, and that's what we enable. We offer something, it's a basic part of our product called a virtual protection group. When you protect VMs, you'll put them in a VPG. It could be as few as 1 VM, or as many as 100 or more. But the point being that whenever you recover them, they will all recover from the same point in time down to the second. So you get a consistent application recovery. Simply illustrating here, at that point, whenever you do recover them, whether it's as a result of a DR event, a planned migration, etc., they will recover consistently. This is all done via one interface. Our dashboard is the same whether you look at it on-prem or in AWS. Simply when you go to configure replication for VMs or workloads, of course, the options will be slightly different. Of course, when you replicate AWS, you'll have AWS specific parameters to configure. And of course, when replicating back out of AWS, you might have vSphere specific parameters. The point being, it's all done via one dashboard that's consistent across target and source. Of course, we have robust reporting. This definitely helps with compliance efforts. Our recovery reports, as an example, or test recovery reports and full recovery reports are incredibly detailed, going down to the individual events. So you definitely have a lot of data to show for your compliance needs. This is an example of the recovery report itself. So how have we helped some of our existing customers, and how can we assist you? So this is just a couple of examples. As an example, we can help in data center consolidations. If you have 4 customers right now, for example, and you just wanted to use AWS as a target, and we could certainly help with that. If AWS is one of our native solutions we're natively integrated with within. And just at that point, integrating, to going to public cloud, maybe you could potentially would potentially no longer have need for a second data center as your recovery site. You could use public cloud for that. It's definitely an excellent use case. Now, support is something that we definitely like to tout. And I mentioned previously that for data protection, for your migrations, for your public cloud initiative, you may have many tools spread across many organizations. And this is definitely not the most efficient way to do business. You have to have people with different skill sets that are familiar with different tools that are difficult to support, and most often. So we can take those tools and consolidate them down into a single solution for both data protection, your migration, and your journey to the cloud. A single dashboard, a single interface to enable that journey. And of course, we're avoiding the cost of downtime. Our journal and our replication solution allows you to recover quickly. So if an event were to occur, which people would say it's not a question of if, but when, you can recover your data consistently with a single process that is incredibly easy to execute. Our failover process is approximately 3 clicks. Anyone that has a tacit familiarity with the solution can accomplish it. We have this data center consolidation message. If you're using public cloud as a target for your opportunity or migration, it's very possible that you wouldn't need the large footprint that you may have in data centers currently. So the pillars of our solution: continuous availability. We want to deliver that always-on customer experience. We want to give you the ability to both perform a planned migration to AWS if that's your goal, disaster recovery, of course, and the ability to fail over and migrate as needed. We want to streamline your resources and accelerate digital initiatives, and using our one tool set as opposed to a diverse set of different tools, different purposes. We want to give you the ability to use that one tool set that your team could be familiar with, streamline your support initiatives, and streamline that migration activity, and of course, cloud agility. We want to give you the ability to seamlessly and easily go from on-prem into AWS. A little bit short. We moved through it pretty quickly, so definitely have some time for some questions if anyone has any.
We had a question that actually just came in. It says here, can I recover a combination of servers for an application using Zerto's orchestration?
Well, yes, absolutely. So it really depends on how you've grouped them when you protect them. I mentioned previously that we have something called virtual protection groups, which are simply a group of one or more VMs you'd want to recover consistently. So of course, you can recover an individual VPG that would have a set of VMs in it. We also offer what's called sub-VPG failover, which means you could fail over just a single VM out of a larger VPG. So if you had 20 VMs, you just need to recover one server. You could certainly do that. So yes, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian. If any other questions come in as we're making this transition, I'll be sure to bring them up. But we do have another.
Hey, Chris.
Go ahead.
There was one question about doing DR across clouds that I kind of talked to a little bit, but I think Brian would like to hear.
That's it,
Brian.
Yeah. So let's see here. Let me see if I can just read it back. It says, how easy is it to create cross-cloud platform disaster recovery?
So going from, for example, AWS to another alternative?
I can only assume that was from Ken. Ken, if you want to elaborate at any point, let us know. But yeah, I can assume that's what he meant there.
So assuming that was the case, then it's incredibly easy. And we definitely support cross-platform for any platform that we support. Of course, there are 4 platforms we support, and we definitely support interoperability between all 4 of them. So incredibly easy and supported. And then the interface, the platform remains the same.
Perfect. Well, I'll obviously at any point, if any other questions come up, just let us know, and we'll make sure they get addressed here. But I did want to excuse me here. Let me jump forward a little bit. Open up for the next raffle. We have another winner we wanted to share. Our next winner for the raffle is Dawn Higgins at Bungie. So Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, we'll be reaching out with a request for your preferred address to send that Bluetooth speaker over to. So I hope that everyone's had a an insightful conversation here. Has enjoyed the conversation. I do want to give plenty of opportunity for anyone who has any questions to bring those up. Jennifer, if you want to monitor the Q&A section, please let me know if anything else comes in. But again, really today's story we wanted to kind of make sure we left with was that, InterVision is a strategic service provider that's focused on providing support and services and solutions to really meet any stage of your cloud journey. So whether you're into the cloud or you have very robust operations, we have services and solutions designed to support that. And you've heard a little bit from the AWS team about the incredible return on investment clients are seeing from the AMS offering, which we deliver in partnership with AWS. And then also Zerto, the incredible capabilities of what's possible today with disaster recovery. And obviously we have some expertise there with our disaster recovery as a service solution. So if you do, want to continue this conversation, please go to InterVision.com and find the contact us, that form there, and one of our experts will reach out to you right away. We'll also be following up with this recording, with a recording of today's session, of course. And in that email, you'll have an opportunity to just respond and start the conversation that way as well. But ongoing, we've got some other engagements we'll be doing here soon. On May 7th, we have a live discussion and demo on something that I think is very relevant right now. We'll be demoing our remote workforce enablement solution with AWS Workspaces and AppStream 2.0. So obviously with COVID, forcing so many folks to work from home, I know that's top of mind for a lot of organizations, and we have a pretty robust solution there. And then later in May, we'll be running on May 29th a CIO panel. So we've got quite a few CIOs that are coming in and joining us to talk a little bit about what organizations can do in response to the new remote workforce situation, and not only the immediate response, but what do we need to do on the long term for the IT leaders. So I think that'll be a great discussion. And you can register at either of those for either of those webinars or any of our webinars there on our website, intervision.com/webinars. So again, I do want to say thank you to everyone who spent time today. I hope you found this conversation insightful. And if you didn't, please let us know, right? We informative to provide some insight for you. And we certainly appreciate your feedback and comments. Again, huge thank you to our key strategic partners, AWS and Zerto, for all their thought leadership and insight they provided today, and for the incredible value that they drive through their technologies and services to our services. So thanks again, AWS and Zerto. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today. I'm going to leave the line open just for a little bit longer here to see if we have any other questions. But if not, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and we really appreciate you joining us for Cloud Tech Day. Well, it looks like we covered all the questions, guys. So again, thank you so much for your time. And we will be following up with a recording and an opportunity to connect with an InterVision expert. So hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks again.